trying to troubleshoot some stuff.
Thank you for letting me.
Oh. Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom. Mark, where are you? Looks like you're not in Manhattan.
It's my last weekend on Fire Island.
So jealous. I love Fire Island. Love it.
Beautiful.
Wow. Beautiful. Beautiful. Morning, Jay. Shabbat shalom. Good morning, Richard.
Good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning, Sue Ann. I love seeing the boxes come alive with moving people instead of static photos. Hello, Razel. Shabbat shalom. Alan, how are you? Where's your better half?
She's a little late. She'll be here in a few minutes.
Okay, all right. Hi, Kathy Lynn. Shabbat shalom. I see Alana, but the box. Hi, Leslie. Did you just send me that beautiful email before Shabbat? Was that you?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Wow.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Okay, we're going to start with the bracha and even start on time. And the source sheet should be in, the link should be in the chat. And Noah just dropped the link in again. Oh, I forgot to. Here. Most of it will be in Exodus 33. Okay. Alan, do you want to do the bracha over Torah study today? I like calling on new people, so you would be a new person to do that.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen, amen. Blessed are you, the source of all Torah, who has given us this day the blessing of engagement and soaking in Torah study. Amen, amen. Okay, so today's Torah reading is not, the usual sort of order of the parshiot, of the parshas. It's a special reading for Sukkot. And it happens to be one of my favorite passages in all of Torah. I know I always say that, but it's true. It's an unbelievable passage. It in Exodus 33, and it happens after the golden calf. And Moses is begging God to send God's presence with the people of Israel. So God said earlier in the parsha, or earlier in the chapter actually, I'm not going anymore. I'm not going with you. I'm going to send my angel to go with you, right? So there was something about the sin of the golden calf that created an irreparable breach, or at least that's how things stand right now. There's been this distancing of God from God's people. And Moses wants to repair that. And you'll see the passage is full of anxiety and going back and forth and just real pain about the distance. And Margot, I have to tell you that when I was putting together my source sheet, I found yours about this passage, Exodus 33. And I took one of your sources, so thank you, Margot. And I'm sure you'll have a lot to say about this. Okay, Boker Tov, Roberta, Sharon, Nehemiah, Debbie from Florida. No? You're not in Florida? You're in New York. We're playing charades. I can't hear you. Write in the chat. Put it in the chat.
Boulder.
Boulder. Oh, you go from one nice place to an even more nice place. Okay. All right. Hi, Ziva. Good to see you. Hi, Becca. Okay, I'm going to screen share. Here we go. Okay, so I'm starting, and many of you will be familiar with this song. John Lennon's incredible song about losing his lover, thinking that the relationship is over, right? I'm sure some of you can hear the music in your ears. I'm not going to sing it, although it's on the page right here, so you can listen to it whenever you want. But it's I'm Losing You. Somehow the wires have crossed. Who did that? Wait a second. Okay, I did not do that. That somehow happened. And you could see like the whole song is really just fraught with anxiety and pain, right? So somehow the wires have crossed, communications lost, can't even get you on the telephone, just got to shout about it. I'm losing you, I'm losing you. Here in the valley of indecision, I don't know what to do. I feel you slipping away, I'm losing you. Well, I know I hurt you then, but hell, that was way back when. Well, do you still have to carry that cross? Don't want to hear about it. I'm losing you. So when I was reading this passage, I was like, and just thinking about like the pain and the anxiety that's sort of, flowing through these words, that's the song that came to me. So I wanted to share that with you. And, we all know what it feels like, right? Whether it's with a lover, a partner, or a child, like when that important connection is disrupted, you just kind of yearn for the presence to be restored. And you're just like, it's just like it at least for me, and you'll I'm looking forward to hearing from you, like it's really palpable, right? You somehow want, for the restoration of the connection, right? The severing of the connection is painful. So as we read this passage, I'm inviting you to think about three things. What is Moshe asking for? What kind of seeker is Moshe? And does Moshe get what he wants? Okay, so I'm going to read this and translate and comment, and then I'm going to open it up to comments from you. And then we're going to make the connection from this passage to Sukkot, which is really just so interesting and really beautiful. So, okay, here we go. Exodus 33. So earlier in the chapter, again, God says, I'm not going with you, right? I'm not going with you, and I'm going to send my angel on your, in your wandering and on your way to the promised land. I'm going to send my angel and my representative, but I'm not going, right? So Moshe does not like that. Vayomer Moshe el Adonai, Re'eh ata omer elai. Sorry, my eyes are really, I think I need new glasses here. Ha'al et ha'am hazeh, v'ata lo hodatani et asher tislach imi. V'ata amarta, yidaticha b'shem, v'gam matzata chen be'enai. So Moses said to God, see, you say to me, lead this people forward, but you have not made known to me whom you will send with me. So the verb to know is all over this passage, right? Further, you have said, I have singled you out by name. But see here in the Hebrew, Moses is telling God, you have said that you've known me by name. There's that verb to know again. And that you've found, and that I've found favor in your eyes. And that's also all over the passage, right? So, do you like me? Do you like me? You like me. You said you like me. You said you know me. You said you like me. Right? It's just, we'll see it again and again. V'ata, and now, imna matzati chen be'einecha, and now if I have found favor in your eyes, right? Again, hodi eni, make it known to me. Make it known to me, right? So again, that verb to know. Please, not et drachecha. Make your ways known to me. It's almost a kind of a mystical quest, right? I want to understand you, God. Ve'eda'acha, and I will know, lema'an emsachen be'einecha, that I may know you and continue in your favor. Ure'eh ki amcha hagoy hazeh, and see that ki amcha hagoy, and see that this nation is, that this people, it's a little complicated, the grammar here. So I'm just going to read the translation. Consider too that this nation is your people. Okay. Vayomar. So God is saying, Panai yelechu, my presence will go, v'hanichoti lach. My presence will go, and this verb is a little difficult to translate. It's related to the name Noach, and it can be comforting, and it can be. I mean, here it's like lighten your burden, or like it will be a relief for you, maybe. Okay, so God says, okay, I'm going to send my presence. Okay, you're asking for this, you can have it. And Moshe says, Vayomer elav, im ein panecha holchim, al ta'alenu mizeh. If your presence doesn't go, don't take us out of here. But God just said, I will send my presence. Why doesn't Moshe believe him? Like, what's going on here? And then Moshe further says, Ubame yivada efo ki matzati chen be'einecha. How will I know that I have found favor in your eyes? Like, God, show me a sign. How will I know? Ani, me, the amecha, and your nation. Halo belechtecha imanu. So how will we know that you're going with us, I and your nation? V'niflinu ani v'amcha mikol ha'am asher al pnei ha'adama. So that we may be distinguished, your people and I, from every people on the face of the earth. Are we still special to you? We're supposed to be your treasured people, right? Are we special? Okay, Jay, is this on point, and is it important right now to say, or can you wait? You can wait, okay. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe. So God says to Moshe, Gam et hadavar hazeh asher dibarta e'eseh. This too I will do, right? This too I will do. Ki matzata chen be'enai, because you have found favor in my eyes. Ve'eda'acha b'shem, and I will know you by name. I will know you by name. So there's that intimacy there, right? God is assuring him, I like you. I like you. Sometimes my husband says to me, I have the like me. Do they like me? Do they like me syndrome? So Moshe, he's liked. Vayomer har'eni. Oh, so what does Moses say now? So he's gotten assurance from God, but he asked for more. Vayomer har'eni na et kvodecha. So Moses says, show me your glory. Show me your, or more colloquially, show me your stuff. I want to see. So Moshe has been shown, and he wants to see more, right? He's going to the outer limit, as far as he can go. Vayomer. So God says, Vayomer, Ani avir kol tuvi al panecha. I will show you all my goodness, or all literally my stuff before you, right? V'karati b'shem Adonai, and I will call by the name of God. It's really interesting, because it's almost like me saying, I will call out the name of Diane. It's weird, right? It's very weird. Lifanecha, before you. V'chanoti et asher achon, and I will be gracious to those I will be gracious to. V'richamti et asher arachem, and I will have compassion for those that I will have compassion for. So there are no guarantees here. I'm going to do it the way I'm going to do it, Moshe. Like, there are no guarantees about forgiveness here. And then God continues and says, Vayomer lo tuchal lerot panai ki lo yirani ha'adam v'chai. So God says, but you can't see my face. You can't come into direct contact with my presence, because a human being cannot see me and live. So basically, Moshe has come as far as he can and still remain a human being. He can't go any further. This is the line. Vayomer, and God says, Vayomer, Hine makom iti v'nitzavti al hatzur. So God says, here's a place with me. It's so sweet. It's so intimate, right? Stand here on this rock, right? Stand here on this rock and be with me. V'haya ba'avor kvodi, and when my glory goes in front of you, v'samticha b'nikrat hatzur, and I will place you in the cleft of the rock. V'sakoti chapi alecha ad avri, and I will shelter you with my palm until I go by. So I will protect you from me. I will protect you from me with my palm, right? There's a little irony there, right? It's almost like God is protecting Moshe from God with God's sheltering presence and God's own self. And then we'll see in a little while that this word is connected to sukkah, which may explain why we read, or is one of the reasons we read this passage today. It was really beautiful, the sheltering presence of God. V'hasiroti et kapi. So when the time is right, I will take away my palm. V'ra'iti et acharai, and you will see my back. Ufanai, and my face or my front. Lo yera'u. You will not see. And my presence or my face, you will not see directly. Okay, so there was a lot there. I'm sure there are a lot of thoughts. So I'm going to stop my share. And remember these questions. What is Moshe asking for? What kind of seeker is Moshe? And does Moshe get what he wants? And as usual, I'm going to ask people to be concise so we can get as many voices on the table as possible. Okay, Jay, and then Beth.
I have a feeling this is not what you're going for, but I think it's a subtext for me in terms of the language. It may relate to your question too. What kind of seeker is Moshe? I don't know what's going on psychologically, the anxiety, the need for intimacy. I leave that to you. But there's something about the language that for me is very transactional, almost legalistic. It starts out with an argument and it lays on the basis of exceptionalism, and it's almost like an indirect reference to the covenant. You're going to be with us, etc. So and sort of God, and there's a bit of a compromise. God said, no, I'm going to do it my way, but wait, I'll ultimately let you see my back. So to me, this is there's a almost transactional, quasi-legalistic almost argument here, as if implicitly Moshe is trying to call God on his promise to the people.
I agree with you. Absolutely. And in that, I also hear, and Moshe is good at that, right? We've heard that rhetoric before. So right after the golden calf, when God wants to destroy all the Israelites, Moshe says, and what will the Goyim think, right? We're in the middle of this great story. You took these people out of Egypt for nothing? Like, what are they going to say, right? So absolutely. And I hear desperation and anxiety, throughout the passage, which is why I think he's making the argument. Like, how are we going to get God to do what God needs to do here? Okay, Beth and Mark, Nehemiah and Margot, Jill. That's it for this round. Okay, after Jill, I'm not going to call on any people till the next round.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
I usually don't react to anthropomorphic images of God.
I'm just closing my window because it's very noisy. Hold on one second. Yes.
I don't usually react to the anthropomorphic images of God in the Tanakh, but reading this morning, I'm really struck by this idea that we can't see God's face, or that Moshe can't see God's face. It's as if God is this sheltering presence, as if we can be in the embrace of God. But if you look at it in human terms, like the most primal embrace, a child with the child's mother, the child's nestled at the breast, looking up at the mother's face. And so the whole parent image doesn't really work for God in this instance. And if we can't see God's face, that means we can never kiss God on the lips unless we've got our eyes closed. And anyway, that's just what came up for me in reading this today. Usually I don't go anywhere near this conflation of God with human anatomy, but today I'm struck by it.
Well, what's interesting is that Moses dies with a kiss of God. Like, you can have that direct intimacy in death, but you can't have it in life. But those are beautiful images. Thank you, Beth. Okay, Nehemiah, Margot, Jill. Oh, and Mark was online. Where's Mark? You still there, Mark?
I lowered my hand because I decided to just put something in chat.
Okay.
As usual, I'm raising my hand to secure that I can talk at the end, but I like to learn to listen. So I'll talk more towards the end after I hear everybody.
All right. So whenever I see your hand, I'm going to leave you for the end, unless you tell me differently.
Perfecto. מושלם.
You get it. You got it, Nehemiah. Okay, Margot.
Okay. So I love Beth's image of the baby looking up at the parent, and it could be a mom or a dad. You know, dads hold newborns. It's a beautiful image. And I disagree, for the sake of heaven, of course, with the argumentative nature that you and Jay are putting on this, because the word yada is not just to know, but it's an intimate knowing, the kind where, you know, Adam yada et Chava. So this is a repetition because it's saying, I love you. I know your name intimately. And Moshe is saying, I love you. I love you. And God is replying, I know your name, the kind of name that gets the essence of you. I think this is a love fest between Moshe and God, the kind that can only happen after forgiveness, after the complete mess up that was the golden calf and the second try. It is only the second try that God ends up on the mountaintop yearning for a deeper knowledge of God. And he will come down with his face radiant as never before. And I think the you can't see my face is a little wink from God, because the next thing that happens, all God's goodness passes before Moshe. And if that's not the face of God, then I don't know what is. So it's like, yeah, the rule is you can't see my face, but here it is. So I'm making it brief, but I will I've been thinking about this a lot, and I'll put a link in the chat. Thank you.
Margot, that was beautiful. And I totally agree with you. It's all about love and desire and yearning and intimacy. About Jay's point, I will say, at least, the way I reconcile the two, is that I think he's also using rhetoric here in his vast passion and desire to be close to God. Like, God, you told us we were supposed to be the special ones. So I hold both of your approaches to this as one. But beautiful, Margot. Thank you so much.
Elu.
But one can hear how deeply you've been thinking about this. Yeah. And I will disagree with you on one point, which is I think there is something that God is withholding, because someone wrote that, you know, the direct vision of God is like looking to the sun. I think my sense is the Torah is right in the sense that we can see God, but we can't see God too directly and remain being a human being. So that's my sense, at least. Okay, Jill, and then we're going to go to the next round. Nehemiah, you can put your hand down. I got you. I promise.
Sure.
Okay. So maybe this is what's happening right now over here in Silver Spring, Maryland, is a metaphor for what I'm about to say. I'm moving the phone and I can't find anywhere that I don't look like completely like light. There's so much light in my house.
Yes, you're illuminated, Jill. Love it.
So of course I'm trying to, bring, anyway, there's this amazing light that came in how you discussed this Torah section, which I've never really put together. So for me, where God says, basically, I will show mercy where I will show mercy, I'm doing it my way. It's the opposite of kind of the Christian prosperity ministry, like if you do X, Y, or Z, I'll give you, I'll give you $1 amount for it. Do you know what I mean? This is not transactional. This is, by definition, grace is grace. It doesn't get meted out in a way that we understand it, because it's grace. And thank God for that, because I know I need it, and when I don't get it, I'm not mad, because I know that God's grace is available. That's the point. It's available, and I'm okay with not having really strict rules about how it's meted out and kind of a reward punishment system. But that being said, also the same thing with Moses, basically, only you can see me kind of like from the back. So we somehow, maybe, God willing, through Torah study, or through looking back in our lives, through seeing, okay, so but while you're in the situation, we're not in control. And it doesn't need to be a legalistic contract for me. And I feel like it's telling me exactly the opposite of it. God's pushing back and saying, my grace and how I am in your life may be available to you, but it won't be available to you right at that moment. It'll be available when it's available.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting because on one hand, to go back to Jay's point, Moses wants God to be who God promised Moses and the people of Israel to be. On the other hand, God is saying, these are my ways. I will be gracious when I will be gracious. I will be compassionate when I will be compassionate. So if Moses really wants to know God, then Moses needs to know God on God's terms. It's like how many times in a close relationship do you want someone to act in the way that you want them to act, but they're going to act the way they want to act, not the way you want them to act, right? Which can be a profound disappointment. I don't know about you, if you all feel that, but that's a real struggle and a huge loss of control. And I think that there's something about, giving up control and really seeing the other person for who they are. It's really a spiritual struggle. It's beyond emotional. So I also read that in this passage. Okay, we're going to go on. Thank you, everybody. And we're going to do some more text, and I'm going to come back to you. So let's see, share screen. Oh, so here's one point I wanted to make about Moshe and what kind of seeker Moshe is. So I read in a piece by Nehemiah Poland today, Rabbi Nehemiah Poland, who's has a specialty in Chassidut, a post on the Hebrew College website that talks about Moshe here as someone who, he's not asking for this for himself. This is not the singular individual mystical quest, right? Moshe is seeking out a relationship with God for the sake of his people, right? We need to reestablish connection with your presence so that your presence will go with the Israelite people, right? So Moshe is repairing a connection between God and the collective, right? So it's very different, I think, often than the idea that we have about spiritual seeker, which maybe comes through, this society by way of Christianity. I don't know. Okay, so now this I borrowed from Margot's page. So thank you again, Margot. She led me to Ibn Ezra. And this is making the connection between the word visakoti, right? I will shelter you in the cleft of the rock, right? With my palm. God says that to Moshe. It has the same root as sukkah. So whether it's spelt with a samech or a shin or a sin, it's still the same word. So God is sheltering Moshe in the cleft of the rock. And what a beautiful way to think about what a sukkah is. Okay, so now we're going to go into a little excursus and go to the whole idea of a sukkah, and then we'll loop back to Exodus 33. So in Exodus 13, verse 22, for those of you who are just looking in a Chumash directly, in a Torah directly, there's a connection made between a sukkah or sukkot or one could make that connection, and God's clouds of glory, or the cloud that God sent in the wilderness for the Israelite people to know how they were traveling during the day. Okay. Okay, so Vayesu mi Sukkot v'yachanu be'etam b'ksei hamidbar. So they set out from Sukkot and encamped at Etam at the edge of the wilderness. Va'adonai holech lifnehem yomam ba'amud anan lan chotam haderech. So God is going before them during the day in a cloud, in a column of cloud, to lead them on the path. And then at night, Valayla ba'amud esh, and at night, God showed God's self in a column of fire, laha'ir lahem, to show them, to illuminate for them, Lalechet yomam v'layla, to go or to travel during the day and during the night. What a beautiful image, right? So God's presence during the day by cloud and God's presence by night in a fire to show them the way. Don't you wish you had something like that? Like what could, like, I kind of want something palpable to like show me which direction I need to go in this sort of like wilderness. Lo yamish amud ha'anan yomam ve'amud ha'esh laila lifnei ha'am. The pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night did not depart from the people. Okay. So now let's jump to Leviticus. So again, I'm sort of doing this like associative traveling through the Torah, looking at the word, or the notion of sukkah or sukkot, booths. Basukot teshuvu shiv'at yamim. You shall live in booths 7 days. So these are the rules of the festivals, the halachot, the laws of the festivals. All citizens in Israel shall live in booths. Kol ha'ezrach b'Yisrael yeshvu basukot. They should all live in sukkot. The next verse is really interesting because the grammar it repeats the idea, but the grammar is different. L'ma'an yed'u dorotechem. Because the generation should know. There's that verb again, to know, right? What should they know? Ki basukot hoshavti et bnei Israel. That in Sukkot I made the Israelites to dwell or to sit. Bahotzi I otam me'eretz Mitzrayim. When I took them out of Egypt, I am God. Ani Adonai Elohechem. I am God, your God. So let's think about this for a minute. Where did the Israelites live in the wilderness? Now, if you go to the parsha of Balak, right, where the non-Israelite prophet Bil'am sort of looks at the Israelites, in their encampments, they lived in tents. They didn't live in Sukkot. So what's all this stuff about Sukkot? What is a Sukkah? So I think the rabbis then go to something metaphorical, and because of the possible association with clouds of glory, or God's cloud, that's how they begin to interpret what a sukkah is. Ki b'sukkah, so Rashi says, based on the Mechilta, ki b'sukkot hoshavti, and I made you to dwell or made you to sit in Sukkot. In Sukkot, what are these Sukkot? Ananei kavod. I made you to dwell in the clouds of glory. Think about that for a minute. We were once, my husband and I, traveling, I think it was Wyoming, and there was a cloud that was literally ground level that we had to drive through. So that's what comes to mind when I think about living in a cloud of glory, right? It was like I've had that experience in a plane going through a cloud, but never like on the ground. We literally drove through a cloud. It was unbelievable, kind of magical, weird, surreal. Okay, so now I want to go to this. So this is the famous machloket or disagreement in the Gemara. And there's a whole Gemara, and if we had time, a whole Talmudic passage on this, and if there's time, we would go through it, but we're not going to do that right now. But what it says here is, Ki b'sukkot hoshavti et bnei Israel. So how are the rabbis interpreting this line, I made the children of Israel to reside in Sukkot, or I put them in these Sukkot, right, to dwell in these Sukkot. And I just love this. This is so beautiful. These booths were clouds of glory. So Rabbi Eliezer said these booths were ananei kavod. They were clouds of glory. But Rabbi Akiva said they established for themselves actual Sukkot. Sukkot mamash asu lahem. So in the wilderness, were they living in Sukkot, like Rabbi Akiva says, totally exposed to the elements, or were they enwrapped in clouds of glory, totally protected, right? So these two arguments are kind of, going in two interpretive directions. One is like, what was the reality for them in the wilderness? How were they living, right? How are they actually living? And the other is, what was their religious, spiritual consciousness? Like, how were they living spiritually? So I'm going to open this up for interpretation, and then I'll share some more thoughts about this. I didn't mean to just to tell you what else is on the page. I didn't mean to post this twice, but I was having some technical difficulties. So this is a Hebrew College blog post, which with a podcast is really worth listening to, with thoughts about fragility and how we interpret fragility. Both, the danger. I mean, it's terrifying to be fragile, right? It's absolutely terrifying, and the beauty of being fragile. And that's what I think the holiday of Sukkot, like, we are held between those two kinds of fragility at this moment, especially at this moment historically, right? Still in a pandemic, all kinds of dangers, right? I'm not even going to list them. But of course, climate crisis comes to mind. And then finally, if you want to listen to I'm Losing You, which is totally worth listening to. Okay, I'm going to stop my share, and I see my friend Harley, he's here. Okay, hit it.
Oh, thank you. So I think with the machloket between Eliezer and Akiva, I don't see why it has to be either or. And I think the Torah, these stories are replete with it's about the emphasis you give it. It depends on your perspective. And do you feel in the midst of nowhere, or do you feel in the midst of the glory? And so that's A. I don't think I don't think it's either or. I think it's really the intentionality you give it. And then to your question, the last question about did Moses find did he find what he was looking for? And within the text, I forget which verse it was in the first reading. There are different names of God, and then so God is saying, the text is saying that Moses' eyes were shielded by God, being protected by him within the rock and at this place. And the rock and the place are two other names of God, in addition to the name of God.
Beautiful, Harley.
Beautiful. And
Tzor and Makom.
Right. And I think what Moses created for himself is what we all wish, that when we're in the midst of that moment that's intimate, that there's no differential between where I am, who I am, and where I happen to be. And it's all engulfed in that makom, both a regular makom, like, oh, I'm here, or the holy makom, where I'm in dveikut with something that feels amazing. Anyway.
So dveikut meaning attachment.
Right, or ecstasy.
Or ecstasy.
Right.
So that's really beautiful. So when does the makom, so the question that's coming to me, emerging from what you're saying, when does the makom, the kind of prosaic, profane place, become the makom, the place where we're connecting to the divine or something bigger? That's when does our consciousness make that shift? That's so beautiful and profound, Harley. Thank you. Okay, Alana, hi.
Hi. Well, my comment, I think, flows with what Harley just said. I'm going back to the wonderful questions, about what is Moshe asking for and what kind of seeker he is. And it feels to me like this is a kind of modeling of through the intimacy with which we get to hear about Moshe's struggle with concretizing divinity, and then being in situation after situation where he's in that paradoxical moment where the makom is both the rock and the non-rock, that he has to be able, I'm thinking about your Devar earlier this week, Rabbi Diane, about emptying in order to let go of what profanes our sense of divinity. And so that image of, I'm jumping to the image of the cloud, is a way that we get to empty of our certainty of what we think we see and even what we think we're looking for, the face of God. But instead we're pointed towards the paradoxical, that in order to see, we have to have a cloud. In order to see God, we have to not look with our usual eyes. And and so again, I feel like Moshe's modeling that kind of struggle that we're all find ourselves in, and the willingness to tolerate the uncertainty and the paradox.
Oh my God. So to take your paradox further, so Sukkah is exactly that paradox, because in order to look at the sun, we need to have the shade.
Yes.
Right? And the halakha, the law of instruction about the Sukkah, is that you need to have more shade than sunlight. And that's how we can look up, right? That's the answer, right? The Sukkah is answering that question. How can we look at God? Thank you. So to speak, how can we look at the sun? So we need that. We need that covering. And I find for myself that the more I understand boundaries and covering, the more blessing and connection I can have. Right? It is really, right? But we want to forget, I want to forget that because I don't want boundaries, right? I don't want blocks. I want to remove the blocks. It's really complicated. So thank you for articulating that. Okay, Richard.
Thank you, Rabbi Diane. When we lived in Washington, D.C., which we did for 35 years, we had a backyard and we built a sukkah. That process really, I think, made Sukkot our favorite holiday. We are building a makom. And it's a very interesting makom. It reminds me in some ways of the Mishkan. And certainly the scene in the cleft of the rock, where your vision is obscured but not obscured. You can see the sky, but you can't see the sky. There's a way in and there's a way out. It's temporary. And all of those attributes of a sukkah are very much, I think, like our own abilities and inabilities to be spiritual. We can walk in, we can walk out, we can see it, we can't. It's temporary, but it comes back. So I think it was those characteristics that made Sukkah a favorite holiday for us when we lived in DC. And now that we're in an apartment in New York and can't build our own Sukkah, we miss that. We miss that a lot.
Oh, Richard, that was such a beautiful articulation. And it takes me back to what Jill was saying about God's ways and the mysteriousness of God's ways, right? I will be gracious when I'll be gracious. Like, we can't be assured of quote unquote spirituality. It doesn't happen the way we plan on it happening, right? It's just like, we can meditate, we can pray, we can do this, we can do that. And still we can sort of lay the groundwork and open the doors, and it happens when it happens. It happens when it wants to happen. At least that's, again, I want to, with the caveat, that's my experience, so, yeah. Okay, Paul and then Roberta, I think you had your hand up. I don't know if you still do. You do, but your hand, oh, there it is. I see it. Okay, Paul.
It's very noisy right here. So it's very noisy, but I just very, very briefly,
I can hear you. It's okay, Paul.
Can you hear me or no?
Yeah.
I'm going to take the route of metaphor. What is Moses seeking? He is seeking self-knowledge, and ultimately he's seeking forgiveness for what he has done over the course of his leadership. And the dialogue that he is having with God is a dialogue with himself. He seeks to know his motivations. He seeks to know how he is going to lead. And the answer that he receives to his questions is you can't know. You can only by looking at God only from behind, he can only understand his actions by looking at his actions after they've occurred. And it is impossible for him to know any more than that. And of course, that is profoundly sad. And at the end of his life, he seeks forgiveness for what he has done.
Beautiful. So you can certainly go in that interpretive direction, like, what is Moshe seeking here? And I think there's something, though, about looking backwards in the later years of your life that's both limiting and illuminating, because you see patterns, right? You see patterns over the decades that you couldn't see, like what I couldn't see in my 20s, what I can see now. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's like in my 20s, I didn't know there was a pattern. I thought I could just master things, and I couldn't master things because there was a pattern that was bigger than me until I understood the pattern. And even then I couldn't master it, but I could understand it, and maybe it kind of softened with that understanding, right, with that consciousness. That was the best that I got, at least so far. I'll let you know in another decade what happens.
Of course, how frustrating is that? How much easier or better would it have been if you'd had knowledge of yourself
in advance?
In advance, but
it's just not the way things work. Yeah.
Right.
But I wanted to say one more thing about Moshe. Yes, it is very humbling, absolutely, and it is, one wishes for more, but that's kind of the way it is. But I want to say one more thing about Moshe. Moshe carries it to the very edge, like that courage to ask for everything he wants, right? And just take it to the edge, really, of existence. Like, how many times do we stop for fear of rejection, or for fear of, if we go in Paul's interpretive direction, for fear of understanding what we might not want to understand, right? So to me, this is inspiration. It's like, okay, keep taking it further. Like, you think there's a block here in the relationship, but keep taking it further. See how far you can get. Keep asking, right? It's dangerous, and it can maybe lead to disappointment or good places.
It can burn you up. God is telling, or Moses is telling himself, that there's only so much I can know.
Yeah. There's only so much you can know, and there's so much you can know. Okay, Roberta, it's funny, Roberta, I will say that I was like waiting for you to raise your hand. I was like, why isn't Roberta raising her hand? Usually you come on deck earlier.
Good. Well, I'm here with my Israeli twin.
And wonderful.
I was wanting her to, because she's at smicha, and she's, natural Hebrew speaker, but she's not, so I'm speaking. So this, wow, are we in a cloud of glory, or are we in a physical shelter, however impermanent and insubstantial the physical shelter may be, which all of them are, and especially we see that in this time of, climate catastrophe, right? We really see how completely unstable, unreliable, impermanent our physical shelters are. And then still, though, there's this cloud of glory, and I'm just taking in this is such a door to a Jewish mindfulness practice, because like the cloud of glory, it's like mindfulness, so it's like if you're in the kitchen and you're cutting carrots, are you cutting carrots, or are you with your breath? Are you
or are you with the carrot in its full glory?
Yeah. So it's just such a deep, beautiful image, and I just feel so curious about these rabbis, Akiva and Elias, like, who were they? Like, were they really saying it was either or? I doubt it. I don't think so. I can't imagine. I think they're just kind of like chavruta, like, hey, don't get too stuck that it's one or the other. So I'm just really, it's just reminding me of like the Zen, the debates between in the koans, these mystics, and then these masters, like playing off each other. So I love the richness.
Yeah. So I want to make one response.
Michal. My name is Michal.
Michal.
Yeah.
Shalom.
Yeah, we were just before talking about my difficulty with authority. So I'm wondering right now, Moshe is showing such courage and push for intimacy.
Yeah.
God is afraid of it.
Ah, nice, Michal.
Definitely say, nah, that's too much for me. Where actually God created the world in order to have a relationship with somebody. And now God is really hesitating. And I don't like that kind of God that holds back.
Okay, so Michal, give me the pasuk. What should God have said? Give me what?
Let's take it easy. He would say to Moshe, give me some time.
Ah, interesting. So God's afraid. God's anxious here.
That's what I think. Or, whatever.
I love it. Thank you.
Play with.
God, I love it. Thank you so much. Okay, so So let me just say that we have 12 minutes. Nehemiah, do you still want to go at the end? Just raise your hand. Yes, you raise your head, like nod your head. You want to go at the end. So we're not at the end yet. Okay, so I'm waiting for you. Okay, Barbara, quick comment. We're going to do another piece of text, and then I'm going to go to Nehemiah and then wrap up.
Hi, everyone. Shabbat Shalom. I'll just be really quick. I noticed somebody else wrote Icarus, and I wasn't going to comment on any of this, but I was very struck early on about the relationship between these stories and the Greeks, Greek gods, and how the rabbis and how the Jews and Moshe, how we assimilated these ancient stories that are also part of our kind of heritage, given where we all are coming from and how it is translated. And, that's always of great interest to me. So I just thought I would.
Yeah, just say a word about Icarus and the connection here.
Well, Icarus and, Daedalus, his father, creates the wings so that they can escape they're in prison, so they can escape, and they do manage to escape. They're being imprisoned by Aetes or one of those people, and so they escape, and Daedalus is fine, but Icarus goes too close to the sun, and he looks at this, essentially he's looking at the sun. He's too close to the sun, his wings melt, the wax melts, and he is destroyed.
Right. Okay. So yeah. So it's that sense of getting too close to the edge.
Right. Like we've been talking about, like you were saying, and everything else. But I love that there are these parallel ancient world stories, because it just makes me feel like we're all one and all part of.
Yes. It's like a conversation between cultures. Absolutely. Okay. Let's just see. Okay, great. So I'm going to do one more piece of text with you. But before that, I want to talk a little bit